Hey, I'm Bob at ILikeToMakeStuff. Today I'm going to show you how to make some really cool light-up signs from pallet wood. I went through a bunch of slats that I had from pallets and found a few that were about the same thickness. They weren't exactly the same, but they were pretty close. Then at the miter saw, I chopped off all the ends that had nails in them. Partially I did this because I didn't want to have to take the nails out, and you weren't going to see the end grain anyway. At the joiner, I tried to clean up the edges on at least one side. Again, this didn't really matter, but since I was going to be cutting them on the table saw, I wanted to have one clean edge if I could get it. At the table saw, I ripped them down to different widths. And really, the width was just enough to clean off the other dirty edge. Back at the miter saw, I set up a stop block so that I could cut several pieces 14 inches wide. I wanted to make the backs for two signs, and so I was going to need several pieces that were exactly the same width. Then I just needed to glue them together, and since you have those nice clean edges from the saw, they glue up really nicely. These cheap Harbor Freight clamps are really good for gluing up panels. In fact, they're cheap enough that you can get them in a whole bunch of different sizes just to have them around. All you have to do is make sure that you get pressure from both the top and the bottom so that the panel doesn't end up warped. That's why I use this pipe clamp on the top. Instead of using my CNC machine this time, I had a chance to use the new Carvey machine, so I designed the signs both in Easel and cut them out with Carvey. I also made another video showing exactly how to use the Easel software. You can click right here or the link in the description to check that out. Carvey is a new desktop CNC machine made by Inventables, the same people that sell the Shapeoko kit. The cool thing about Carvey is it's not a kit, it's a finished machine, and it's something you would use more at your desk rather than in a workshop. I could have produced about the same thing on my Shapeoko, but since I had a chance to use this one, I thought I'd try it out. You can click here or the link in the description to find out more about Carvey if you're interested. The pieces for both signs turned out great. After a couple hours, both panels that I had made were dry and ready to be taken out of the clamps. Then I just had to cut them down to the right size. Using pretty much the same process as before, I had to cut some pieces that would fit around the outside of the back that I had just made. Of course, pallet boards are never the same thickness, so it's a good idea to cut the top and the bottom pieces, set them in place, and measure the full height of the sign before you cut the side pieces. Then you can cut the side pieces to fit. Once all the pieces for both signs were cut, it was just a matter of ripping them down to the right thickness. Essentially, this is just a shadow box, so the thickness is really just based on how you want it to look. Then I attached all the side pieces to the back panel with some brad nails. I put on the front and the back, and then when I added the two sides, I made sure to line up the front face of them. The back doesn't really matter as much because you're never going to see all the back panels at one time. The front will matter because you're going to put a frame on it here in just a second. I did the same thing for the bigger sign. But before I put the front frame on, I wanted to put in the LEDs. I got these LED strips online, and they come in like 25-foot lengths with an adhesive back, and you can cut them down to the length that you need. So I added up the interior dimensions of the box and then cut strips to fit. I drilled a hole in the back of the box so I could feed it through so the wire would be hanging out the back. It was actually kind of hard to pull these through because the hole was a little too small. I just didn't want it to be obvious from the front that the hole was there. By peeling off the adhesive back, you can easily stick these around to the outside of the box. So that you don't actually see the LED strip, make sure you put it as close to the front edge as you possibly can. Start out with a little bit extra and then just trim off whatever you don't need. Plug it into the power adapter that came with it, and there you go. Nice and bright, even color. On the first strip I did that I got from Inventables, the adhesive was really good and stuck to the wood really nicely. The second strip, not so much. I ended up having to use CA glue to hold it on. But this strip was made of RGB LEDs, meaning it came with a remote that you could use to change the color of the strip. To place the logo, I had to find the center point in each sign. Then I printed out the logo at the same size that I used to cut it on the CNC and found its center. Then I could place them together and then use a ruler to measure to make sure it was square and level to the box itself. I just temporarily nailed it in place. Now here's a little trick. I wanted to put these pieces down to match where they are on the picture, and so I used a utility knife to cut in on the inside corners of each one of these pieces. That gives you a reference point to set your pieces in place. I attached each one of the pieces of the logo in place with CA glue. When you do this, make sure to get the horizontal and the vertical lines matched up with the two cuts that you made. This will keep the pieces square to each other, not just square to the box. If they're not square to each other, they'll look tilted and the logo just will not look right. I did basically the same thing for the Carvey logo, but one thing that made it a little bit easier was that I used a metal ruler as a baseline. As long as it stayed in place, all I had to worry about was even spacing between them. Finally, I just had to make the front frame for both boxes. I ripped down some more pallet pieces to about 2 inches. This time I didn't worry about cleaning up one edge because I kind of wanted a nasty edge on either the inside or the outside of the frame. At the miter saw, I made a 45-degree cut on all 4 pieces at the same time. It may not be the best way to do it, but it was pretty efficient. Then it was back with the brad nailer to add these on to the front of the boxes. You'll notice that one box has the nasty edge on the inside, one has it on the outside, and that was because I really couldn't decide the best way to do it, so I figured I'd do one of each. One of the great things about using pallet wood or reclaimed wood of any kind is that you don't have to be terribly precise because any mistakes you make are probably going to be overshadowed by the character in the material. The remote for the RGB LEDs uses an infrared receiver, so you need to mount that in a place that you can get to it. I ended up using one of the nail holes that was in one of the pallet pieces and just drilled it out enough just to be able to stick it through. And from more than 6 inches away or so, you can't even see it. That IR receiver is actually right here in this hole, which makes it really nice because when you use the remote, you can just point it anywhere at the sign and change the color. Now, as far as the LEDs go, I actually prefer the color of this one better. One of the disadvantages of using RGB LEDs is that it uses red, green, and blue to try to create white. The results of that are never actually pure white like they are in a sign like this. Let me show you. This is the white produced by this strip. And when you compare these two, obviously it's not really that white. So choosing the right strip for you is really about what color and what color temperature you want to get out of it. There's a lot of options and they all cost about the same. None of them are very expensive. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments below. Be sure to check out ILikeToMakeStuff.com for more projects. I'm on all the different social media, so check me out on your network of choice. I've got more project videos and more Brain Pick live Q&A episodes right here. If you'd like to help support the projects that I make and the shows that I produce, be sure to click right down here. There's a lot of different ways you can do that, and I would appreciate any help that you can give. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.